As the malevolent spirit prepared to go on a rampage for its own amusement, the prideful Wee Payok humbly knelt and introduced herself respectfully to the higher power. She offered her Mountain Willow Manor's services, aiming to help the spirit adapt to modern times. The spirit, recognizing her significance, paused to consider her proposal. Madame Wee's husband had achieved the level of the breath of the sun in less than 300 years. She believed that allowing the malevolent spirit to possess her husband's body might accelerate her own slow progress. However, even for a malevolent spirit, this woman's audacity was too insolent.
She belongs to the streets.
Instead of agreeing, the spirit scorned her manor's name and vowed to visit the organization, killing and draining every alchemist in sight. But first, it sought to feast upon these greedy individuals. Madame's lover, No Won, was the first to fall lifeless to the floor. Everyone had succumbed except for Seoul, Makium, and Madame Wee. Although the duo might have been severely underleveled, they refused to give up without a fight. As the spirit's transformation reached its peak, it promised not to take the lives of the remaining three. Madame Wee believed this to be an act of mercy, but the truth was different. The spirit intended to leave one man alive, Seoul, to serve as its future vessel. Seoul, not yet 100 years old and already at the law of spirit energy, possessed decent potential and a long lifespan, perfect for the spirit's purposes. This situation was insane, but Seoul saw an opportunity, especially since he had the stone chest. As for the two women, they would serve as energy sources once the spirit had taken over Seoul. The spirit reveled in its malevolence, toying with their lives. It promptly leaped into Seoul, who had no choice but to proceed with a plan involving the stone chest. However, Seoul first created some distance with a swift step to the side. A challenge the spirit eagerly accepted. Just as another charge dangerously neared Seoul, he unveiled the stone chest. The sealing power of this tool was extraordinary, but unfortunately, the spirit managed to retreat just in time. Nevertheless, Seoul was relentless. He hurled the seal like a bee's sting. The chest began consuming the freshly replenished evil spirit. To be safe, Seoul cast his own inner binding seal. After spending 1,000 years inside this empty prison, the apparition would do anything to avoid returning. To end this madness, he had to close the box at any cost. However, Seoul's limited power was waning, and the spirit knew it. The threads of the inner binding seal started to loosen until they suddenly gained a power boost. Senior Sister came to the rescue, assisting in closing the chest. She possessed more raw spiritual energy than Seoul. Despite the spirit's desperate pleas for help, Madame Wee, no matter how greedy she was, knew better than to trust such a malevolent entity. The spirit continued its pleas, even cursing its own soul, but it was too late. This high-level alchemist had humiliated himself before being sealed once again. The hardest part was over, but the complete seal was barely finished. Madame Wee had endured much in her long life, but this was the most terrible ordeal she had ever faced. Her lover lay lifeless, and the least she could do was wrap him in silk and arrange a funeral outside. She recognized that Seoul had saved all their lives, and that she also held him responsible for not using the stone chest earlier, before No Won's pointless death. She wished to seek compensation from Seoul for his delayed actions, but she found herself in an advantageous position as the potential sole owner of every treasure in this place. Therefore, her terms were clear. Seoul would not touch a single spirit stone in this vast treasure haul. He agreed, but that did not mean Makiam would be denied their fair share of the treasure. However, Madame Wee had no reason to spare these two individuals. She could return home wealthy and with her reputation intact. Therefore, she decided that dead men told no tales. Just when you thought it was over, this unpredictable figure brings yet another disaster. Seoul attempted to appeal to her remaining humanity, but Madame Wee refused to heed any advice from those she considered weaker. The initial attack was effectively blocked by his defensive Dharma tool. Makiam refused to stand idly by as her junior suffered, launching 2 spiral bombs toward the avaricious madam. However, the disparity in power between them was glaring. This resentful woman felt insulted and vowed to inflict a painful demise upon them. At present, both of them are holding up, but the worst is yet to come. Seoul is clearly fatigued from the earlier turmoil. Madame Wee intends to wear him down further while focusing on eliminating Makiam first. In a matter of moments, his senior sister had already sustained severe injuries across her body. She held her own against the divine fire cudgel, while Seoul was forced to continually defend with his shield. There was no opportunity to employ the lesser devil poison, and Makiam's transformation was out of the question. However, there remained one last, seemingly foolish option. The only answer to Madame Wee's greed. While she reveled in torturing the two juniors, Soul unexpectedly launched a blitz charge, holding the madam's greatest fear in his hands, the stone chest. Contained within this seal was an exceedingly angry and frustrated spirit that had nearly achieved its goals. It had barely begun to comprehend the unfolding situation when the seal on the chest started to break. The first sight that greeted the apparition was the woman who had forsaken him. Few hold grudges as tenaciously as a scorned evil spirit. Soul realized this might have been a questionable decision, but he had no other recourse. Madame Wee was now lifeless and drained, leaving them to confront even greater menace. The apparition had learned from its past mistakes and was determined not to fall for another surprise sealing technique. However, the two remained undaunted by its presence. The stone chest served as a tunnel for greed, obscuring anyone's vision. Yet, given the immense strength of this elementary spirit, it held no regard for these two, who were mere specks of dust to him. The spirit proposed a deal, released the box, and they could depart peacefully. Such a compromise was impossible. They had no choice but to engage in another round, using the stone chest to defy the odds. With that decision, the spirit absorbed the spiritual power from the treasure pile, a regrettable waste of precious artifacts. Within moments, it became clear that the creature was now much faster than before. Timing the resealing would prove challenging, but surrendering was not an option. Soul remained resolute, activating the power of absorption once more. However, the apparition wouldn't be deceived a second time. It simply hurled a rock at Soul's hand, causing the box to loosen. With this opening, seizing control of his vulnerable body should be a breeze. Just as the powerful spirit was about to claim its new vessel, Soul's bracelet began to react. Its brilliance radiated throughout the area. This was the last artifact that the enigmatic Yi Qiangso had in his possession. A crystal protection amulet, an item the spirit had a harrowing encounter with centuries ago. Only 6 crystals out of 8 were activated, as Yi Qiangso had used it for his own protection back then. Makiam intended to seize this opportunity for their escape, but the door remained resolute in denying their exit. Subduing the elementary spirit might be their only way out now, and the crystals could make it possible. In the meantime, consuming Soul's remaining precious paddle elixirs for replenishment was the plan. Unfortunately, his remaining spiritual energy could only activate 2 crystals. Perhaps he had forgotten that Makiam was a natural reservoir of pure spiritual energy. Together, they seemed to activate all the crystals. The tables turned, and the weakening spirit was now trapped with the duo. Their next move would involve using the stone chest once more. This would be their final opportunity to end this protracted battle once and for all. Soul rushed as fast as he could toward the weakened elementary spirit, making one last desperate struggle for survival. In response, the apparition unleashed a deadly red skull smoke reeking of death. Spirits are doing vape tricks now. Huh. Soul's spiritual energy shouldn't be meager, yet he remained paralyzed in front of the ominous skull. Makiam attempted to shout at him to seek cover, but her words fell on deaf ears. She had no choice but to leap in, creating a protective barrier amidst the encroaching smoke. However, her energy shield quickly deteriorated and shifted its focus to the defenseless Soul. The specter of death loomed, rendering him motionless. His senior sister, turning to see the impending danger, remembered the man who had made her who she was today. He hadn't abandoned her during his berserk state, staying with her until the very end. He had treated her with kindness and patience, ultimately saving her life. Just as Soul hadn't given up on her, she refused to give up on him. Makiam's power surged as she began her transformation. This time was different from the past. Her motivation was fueled by the desire to save Soul. Simultaneously, the elementary spirit began to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Such power was only attainable by celestial beings. If the skull could overpower the duo, the spirit would emerge victorious. Soul slowly regained his strength, but the skull persisted in its advance. Just as Makiam reached her limits, Soul finally managed to shake off the skull's influence. This was their only chance to permanently seal the weakened elementary spirit. The almighty spirit had been reduced to a helpless apparition, desperately fleeing from the chest. It was weakened to the point where Soul could easily catch up. With no other option, the spirit made one last desperate attempt to possess Soul's body. However, this proved to be a foolish decision as it once again fell victim to the chest's suction. The lengthy battle in the palace had finally come to an end with the apparition sealed away. Soul even used an advanced-grade talisman for added assurance. Makiam didn't appear to be severely injured, just drained from harnessing her celestial powers. So much had transpired in such a short time that Soul felt as if he were dreaming. A firm pinch on his cheek confirmed that it was indeed real. Finally, they had a moment to catch their breath and express themselves freely after enduring such hardships. As Sowell looked at his senior sister, he couldn't help but blush slightly. It took them half a day to recover, but dividing the treasure in the room would likely take even longer. After splitting the loot evenly, only a few items remained: the abominable stone, the divine fire cudgel, 2 talismans, and the sacred needle. They also had the full set of Madame Wee's carriage. One talisman was for spiritual energy recovery, and the other was for defense. Makia worried that dividing treasures could strain their relationship, but Sowell generously offered her the defensive talisman, the silk jade belt of the south. He chose the abominable stone to enhance his existing tools. With trust in one another, they easily divided the rest of the treasures. The brilliant shadow ring, meant for spiritual energy recovery, went to Sowell, while the divine fire cudgel was bestowed upon his senior sister. This tool was an excellent match for her abundant raw spiritual energy. Madame Wee's treasures were challenging to display publicly, but they were invaluable. Makion took all the supreme-grade amulet loot and divided it equally, believing they might need it in the future. After some time, Sowell completed everything on his to-do list, even crafting dun pills from the sacred herbs. All that remained was using the abominable stone. Surviving the ordeal, thanks to his encounter with Yi Qiangso, Sowell felt compelled to do right by him and deliver the old man's ashes to his family. First, they would visit the Yi family in Yan'an, followed by enhancing his Dharma tools. Back at the inn they had stayed in, the server boy greeted Sowell enthusiastically. Rumors of Madame Wee and Elder Pion's disappearance were circulating as they hadn't emerged from the rift. The issue lay in the fact that some people had witnessed Sowell and Makiam entering the lake with a windmill carriage. Sowell sought information about the Yi family, but the server boy was clueless. After inquiring further, even the adults in the vicinity had no knowledge of the Yi family. However, the boy had an idea that might be of assistance. He quickly brought an elder who seemed to possess some relevant information. Bro should have just used Google. It had been quite some time since anyone in the region had heard of the Yi family name. The Yi family had once been the most distinguished clan in Yan'an. They were recognized by the mark of the rivulet phoenix on their shoulders, a symbol that commanded respect and envy, even from the elder. The rivulet phoenix was a sacred beast with the power to repel evil energy, much like the protective crystal bracelet that had saved them. 300 years ago, when the alchemists failed to return from the rift, their families began to decline without their leaders. The elder knew that the once glorious Yi family had been forced out of the Yan'an region. Some speculated that they had retreated to the Linsong region, but this was mere conjecture. At least Sowell had some clues about his next destination. In the prosperous Linsong region, a martial competition was underway. Today marked the day a particular family would choose a suitor through this contest. The host, Yi Damyong, explained the rules. Any man who could prove his skills would have the chance to marry the beautiful Yi Moonbi. Moonbi was renowned for her beauty, a name that had reached the ears of every young, passionate man. Among the competitors stood Sowell, eager to participate. Today, the suitors wouldn't compete directly for Moonbi's hand. Instead, the winner would be determined through the contest itself. The competitors would fight among themselves, and the sole victor would earn the right to marry her. Sowell had witnessed numerous life-threatening battles, but a competition for marriage was a first. The first contestant, not interested in Moonbi's hand, was there to scout for his young master. With confidence stemming from his middle stage of heavenly birth, he appeared strong in Yunmen. As more challengers stepped forward, it became evident that he was indeed above average. Sowell found the martial competition surprisingly enjoyable to watch. However, the decline of the Yi family, despite their reputation for purity, remained a surprising turn of events. Typically, suitor competitions were held between a woman and a prospective groom she had acknowledged. But in Moonbi's case, it felt more like she was being auctioned to a high-level alchemist. Amidst the bustling crowd, a confident laugh and the words of a young man echoed. He was known as One Hyojang, the third noble son of the One family, a later-stage heavenly birth alchemist from Yongmen's most prestigious family. Moonbi had her reservations, but she recognized that marrying the young master might be the best course. Seeing no challengers for One Hyojang, the host contemplated ending the competition early. However, an unexpected twist occurred when a weathered, old man jumped onto the stage to announce his participation. A wave of apprehension swept through the crowd. Even Sowell sensed that something was amiss. Murmurs about this old man, Ma Chiolji, who had mastered the law of spirit energy, began to spread. He was infamous for having dozens of concubines but never marrying. A 300-year-old man competing to marry a young woman was considered deeply disgraceful. Ma Chiolji was notorious for discarding concubines like trash once he was done with them. One Hyojong attempted to reason with the old man, but Ma Chiolji remained shamelessly unbothered. He openly declared his intention to take Moonbi and do as he pleased after winning the fight. Despite trying to maintain civility, One Hyojong realized that conversation was futile and chose to engage in combat. Moonbi's beauty had captivated him since he first glimpsed her smile on the streets. He couldn't allow such an unscrupulous old man to possess Lady Yi. However, One Hyojong's chances of victory appeared slim to none. He steeled himself, prepared to use all his amulets if necessary. Despite Ma Chiolji's unimpressive appearance and arrogant demeanor, he proved to be a formidable opponent. One Hyojong launched a full-powered attack with his amulets, but it was effortlessly blocked by a mud wall. Even with all his might, he couldn't make a scratch. Ma Chiolji retaliated mercilessly, landing a devastating blow on the young master. Ma Chiolji's arrogance knew no bounds as he challenged any other potential challengers. Lady Yi's distress was visible, and the old man's lecherous intentions were clear. He planned to treat her in the most perverse ways as his concubine. However, just as the crowd clamored, someone unexpectedly stepped onto the stage to face the fearsome old man. It was none other than Soul, wearing a casual smile on his face. He's just doing side quests at this point. Now he's about to confront the elderly man. Naturally, Ma Chiolji would criticize him for his youth, but a closer look reveals that the competitors are evenly matched. The old perv decided to take the cautious route, attempting to dissuade Soul from participating in the contest. There should be no rule preventing anyone from entering this competition. Even the host allowed the challenge to proceed. Soul may be a stranger to the Yi family, but he's likely better than the old perv with a bad reputation. Ma Chiolji is now in a sour mood, realizing he must fight seriously. Both competitors retrieve their Dharma tools, preparing to begin. Even the audience simply wants the young alchemist to defeat the old perv. Soul can't use destructive sword arts in front of so many people, so his second choice is spiral bombs. Seeing that he's not using talismans, the old fart gains some confidence in his spiked ball and chain. The heavy weapon crashed down onto Soul's shield with intensity. This weapon, the meteor pendulum, truly lives up to its name. However, Soul noticed something strange. The intensity of this attack disappointed him. After facing some powerful breath of the sun experts like Madame Wei, a regular alchemist can't even pose a threat to him. He had planned to use his alter ego clones, but it seems there's no need for that. He can simply use his shield and nothing else to overpower the enemy. There is no way that a fragile energy barrier can withstand a hit from Soul. This power stems from the principle of wood fire. Multiple spiral bombs came crashing into the old perv's defense. He could only stand there, doing his best not to be gravely injured. He's growing weaker by the second as he desperately defends. The gap between them is evident, but Ma Chiolji is too arrogant and prideful to accept that. He dropped all his tools and shields, attempting to trick Soul into stopping the fight, or else he would have to go all out and seriously harm the young man. Soul casually accepted, and the old perv immediately fled from the stage. A shocking match ended just like that, and it seems there are no more challengers against the mysterious young alchemist. This marks the end of the suitor competition, and it appears that Soul has become entangled in something complex once again. Outside of Youngman lies the Yi family's humble manor. The host, Yi Damyang, escorted him there. Soul had a different reason for participating in the suitor competition, but now he's caught in a major misunderstanding with Lady Yi. He revealed that he only entered the suitor competition to stop the old perv, not to win Mubi's hand. Yi Damyang was almost ready to confront Soul after hearing those words, but he couldn't afford to be rude to a law of spirit energy alchemist. Soul is here to deliver something from the rift to the Yi family. A trinket meant for direct blood relatives of the family. It bears the name of Yi Qiangso, Yi Damyang's uncle. After sitting down and recounting the story of what happened to the old man in the rift, it seems the family has found closure at last. Yi Qiangso was an excellent and clever leader, but his final moments were filled with grief and lunacy. Soul also politely handed them the crystal beads that saved them from the evil spirit. The host returned them to him, and Soul offered his assistance as payment for the bracelet saving his life. For now, he was invited to stay at the manor as a guest. It turns out that interfering in their suitor competition had more serious consequences than he initially thought. The Yi family is under immense pressure from the Huang clan of Juwon, to the extent of receiving an eviction order. The Yi family has been in decline after being forced out of various locations. They've settled in the small city of Youngman for a few hundred years now, but the Huang family has come, claiming their land and demanding everything the Yi family has left, including their talismans. Even the government and other families are turning a blind eye to this issue. This is why they are so eager to marry off Lady Yi to a high-level alchemist to mediate with the Huang family, a family that has a few law of spirit energy alchemists in their ranks. However, Stubble might have a plan to address this problem. Hold up, let him cook. He planned to stay with the Yi family for a while. News of Ma Qiuji's defeat at his hands was currently spreading. They could then spread a rumor about his marriage to Moonbi. After that, the Huang family would be forced to reassess the situation instead of causing an uproar. This would buy them some time. Yet Damian felt embarrassed to accept Soul's help again, but they desperately needed it. He would only agree to the plan after getting Moonbi's approval since the rumors would implicate her the most. Soul hadn't thought that far ahead, but he was open to the lady's opinion, of course. He took advantage of his time in the manor to finally use the abominable stone to transform his Dharma tools into talismans. He had everything he needed and succeeded. Lady Yi entered his room and wanted to talk. For now, they had to pretend to be husband and wife. It had been 6 months since they started implementing the plan. After presenting the methods to Moonbi, she mulled it over and accepted. They held a modest fake wedding while Soul was busy crafting talismans. Today was a good day to make a public appearance. Before the competition, the lady had to pay a toll fee to enter the city. But now, the Yi family has become a major power in Yunmen. The Wang family didn't dare to challenge them, but support from other families was still lacking. Although they were spouses in name, they felt awkward around each other. They had never exchanged gifts since their fake wedding, so Sobel wanted to treat her to something nice that day. Despite his good intentions, the lady refused, making their interactions even more awkward. Before they knew it, they ended up participating in a martial arts competition in the city. The match was enjoyable until Soul spotted a very familiar face. It was young Master Su, who had already reached the middle stage of heavenly birth. Coming to Daowu Nation had been a wise decision. Young Master Su's siblings were also present. He greeted Lady Su, feeling that their meeting here was fate, considering the size of the place. Moonbi and Soul might be pretending to be husband and wife, but she felt uneasy knowing he was familiar with another lady. Even Lady Su had heard rumors about the young alchemist's wedding. Being reminded of their charade didn't sit well with Moonbi. That same night, a reunion took place in the city's inn. Given the Su siblings' enthusiasm about his marriage, Soul wanted to clear things up first using a noise-canceling energy barrier. He explained the family's situation and their plan to save them. They drank and conversed throughout the night, clearing the air between everyone. Each person in the room's family had been saved by Soul in one way or another. However, the intoxicated Moonbi seemed to have a different opinion about him. Thanks to her fox husband, she believed she'd have to live alone for the rest of her life. As for whether the sham could turn into a real marriage, Lady Yi assured everyone that it wouldn't happen. Soul simply didn't show any interest in her as a woman, and she reciprocated. In fact, she missed the days of being pursued by numerous suitors in Yunmen. From her perspective, Soul made for a poor fake husband. As for Senior Guango Duan, he had always been elusive like the wind. The Su siblings had also gone to the rift while the seniors stayed by the lake. All of them at the table were alchemists, but everyone except Soul struggled with their liquor. Suddenly, a mysterious old woman appeared, claiming that someone wanted to meet Soul. Given the current scheme, the Baoxin sect must have traced him. However, in just 2 words, his curiosity was piqued. Yanimation. This was why the leader had been seeking him. So he went to a stone near the inn. The crafty leader congratulated him on his marriage but got right into business. She had actually asked the General Assembly about Yanimation out of embarrassment for not knowing. Before sharing any information, she had a few questions of her own. She led a vast intelligence network, so she likely knew a lot about him already. Yet, these days, she couldn't get Soul's mystery out of her mind. This woman probably wouldn't easily provide him with the information he sought. She believed that what she had discovered outweighed the value of the information about the faceless murderer. She didn't realize that Yanimation was on a different continent altogether. Xiaobing couldn't help but be curious when an unknown person asked for directions to a distant country on another continent. It was clear that she wanted answers before providing any information herself. Every alchemist sent by her sect into the rift, including the esteemed Elder Pion, had not returned. It was reasonable to assume that they had perished in the lake. The lake in the rift had long been known as a perilous enigma, but some alchemists claimed to have seen Madame Wee enter without emerging. This raised the possibility that a conflict over treasure had led to their mutual demise. A deeper inquiry revealed the names Soul and Makium, who had accompanied the red heavenly winged horses. It was only natural to wonder how these two had survived when all others had perished. Xiaobing was insatiable when it came to gathering information. She would plead earnestly to uncover the mysteries of that lake, but Soul had nothing to share. He felt no obligation to recount the events. Logically, Soul should have been insignificant against two formidable experts, yet they had returned unscathed. Xiao Bing sensed something extraordinary in this young man that others couldn't see. There was an open secret that Madame Wee's relationship with her husband was strained due to her closeness with her loyal servant. At present, the Mountain Willow Manor remained unaware of Soul's involvement in these matters. Returning to the reunion room, it appeared that everyone had sobered up. Soul sat beside Lady Yi, who blushed in embarrassment, recalling her drunken remarks. Despite their pretense of being a couple, it seemed she was becoming closer to young Master Su than ever before. Even the prince joined in the jest. Soul hadn't encountered someone as enjoyable as Lady Yi in a long time, and he contemplated spending more time at the Yi family's manor. All their relatives were nearby as well. It appeared that the modest Yi manor was about to become bustling with people. The Su family seemed to have adapted to the local way of life. Even Ya Damyong warmly welcomed them with an open heart and a bright smile. As for Soul, someone from the Wei family was looking for him. The Mountain Willow Manor would no longer pose a threat to Soul in the future, but Madame Wei was highly regarded by the Wei family's leader. They had already visited the Baoxin sect seeking information. Xiao Bing wanted to use this impending threat to pressure Soul into talking, but he remained unfazed. Accusing him without evidence and with inaccurate information would only damage the guild's reputation. Soul would insist that he had endured torment at the hands of the breath of the sun experts and had barely saved himself. However, the astute leader had made a connection between the Yi family's history and the lake in the rift. Xiao Bing even observed that the interactions between the supposed husband and wife were rather cold. Soul was confident that it was all conjecture, and that the Baoxin sect would not indulge in spreading gossip. Nonetheless, Xiao Bing was so infuriated that she contemplated revealing some fragments of information that could put Soul in trouble. It was futile to argue with her at this point, so he decided it was time to leave. As for the information about Yana Nation, he would figure it out on his own. He had no desire to deal with this devious woman any longer. Nevertheless, it seemed that today he would have to contend with her vengeance. In one of the rooms of the manor, a man awaited Soul's arrival. He casually smoked a pipe and insulted the fall of the Yi family. This man held no regard or respect for the Yi family and Soul. His name was Wei Zhougaong, and he expected Soul to be aware of his agenda for the day. Enough with hesitation and probing. It was time for a conversation. Zhou Gaiyang had come to inquire about the disappearance of Madame Wei, last seen with Soul inside the rift. Zhou Gaiyang simply wanted to know why their young miss had returned. Soul explained that his involvement in her fight with Elder Paiyang was purely coincidental. This explanation made sense. After the two experts faced off, they engaged in a verbal and physical confrontation, leaving Soul with no choice but to step away from the chaos. In Soul's words, he had been lucky to escape while the experts fought. This excuse seemed feeble to Zhou Gaiyang, as the deaths of everyone involved couldn't have occurred so easily. However, Soul stuck to his story. If Zhou Gaiyang reported this to his leader without evidence, Soul would be labeled as responsible for Madame Wei's death. From the beginning, this man was determined to make Soul a scapegoat. The Wei family wouldn't act against Soul without evidence, but their relationship with the Yi family was strained. It was essentially a direct threat to Soul. The Wei family knew about the feud between the small families in this small city. They could easily send numerous spirit energy alchemists to the Huang clan, watching destruction befall the Yi family. It was a dirty but effective method to get to him. Amidst all this chaos, who would notice if Soul went missing without anyone realizing? However, Zhou Gaiyang wanted to assure him that his life would be spared in the end. He believed that no matter how powerful the Wei family was, starting a war just to capture him would be too troublesome. But that wasn't the case. This would be a simple task for the Wei family. There was still an underlying resentment within the Wei family when compared to the glory days of the Yi family. After all, they had led the destruction of the rivulet Phoenix 300 years ago. Soul found himself in an unfortunate circumstance, unable to escape. Zhou Gaiyang admired his courage and potential, but this situation had grown beyond the young man's abilities. The representative of the Wei family had to leave with disappointing news. They both understood that this was the calm before the storm, yet they acted casually. Xiao Bing had betrayed him completely, and there was a possibility that Mok Yum was implicated as well. For now, he needed to speak with Yi Damyang first. It didn't take long for the Huang family to make their unreasonable demands once more. They gave an ultimatum of 3 months before declaring all-out war. Soul had also come to check the status of his request, the spread of an unusual rumor in the city. A rumor that Wu Soul, the son-in-law of the Yi family, had an inclination towards men, and as a result, his beautiful wife, Yi Moonbi, had been living in isolation.
Sussy baka.
If Makium heard this rumor and came to him, it would be killing two birds with one stone. For now, a meeting with all the Yi family members was in order. They couldn't accept the Huang family's demands, so war was inevitable. They anticipated facing 3 Law of Spirit alchemists. But Soul knew it wouldn't be just 3. With the support of the Wei family from Hujing, the Huang family could muster 4 to 5 more experts for the war. The family responsible for their initial downfall 3 centuries ago was now seeking to finish them off. They lacked the power and influence to handle the impending disaster. Even the leader had given up hope and ordered everyone to leave the clan. If everyone left Yueyang province, they could at least preserve their lives. But Soul couldn't bear to see the family crumble like that. A formidable wave was crashing down, and the feeling of helplessness was overwhelming. It had been 100 years since Yi Haxiang assumed the position of family head, enduring all the tough and painful times of their family's decline. Soul couldn't care less about all that. No matter how challenging the circumstances, witnessing the family's patriarch surrendering and exhaling despair as lifeless as a corpse is disheartening, particularly considering his role as the esteemed leader of the Yi family. Yet this man persists in seclusion. He hasn't exerted himself for the family's benefit. A true family head should not await the clan's inevitable decline. Right from the outset, everyone should have ousted this pitiable individual masquerading as the family head. While this frail elderly man was squandering the family's future, no one took action. If no one possessed the confidence to oppose this feeble-minded Yi Haxiang, everyone simply went along with the tide, regardless of its direction. In reality, they were significantly outmatched by the Huang family. Even the alchemists from the Wei family confirmed their impending doom. Soul himself intended to participate in the impending conflict, yet no one had the courage to join him. Observing the passive response of these defeated elders, he left the room in frustration. In the dead of night, the family head, Damiang, and Moonbi sought him out. For an extended period, the Yi family had suffered without assistance, and they were perplexed by Soul's willingness to intervene. Opting not to disclose his personal association with the Wei family, Soul simply reiterated how Yi Qiangsu's crystal had saved his life. He could have kept that information to himself. So he casually mentioned that it's just in his nature. He is a peculiar young man, and some might suspect ulterior motives. To be honest, the Yi family doesn't fully trust Soul. Nevertheless, in the face of the looming threat, they were willing to take a chance and entrust their fate to the young alchemist. It turns out that the family head and successor's metal possess a unique ability. It serves as a key to unlock the family's secret vault in times of crisis. However, 300 years ago, Yi Qiangsu took his metal to the rift and never returned. Now that Soul has brought back the same metal, everything has changed. It finally makes sense why they've fallen so helplessly from grace. Considering their illustrious history, it stands to reason that they have valuable items stashed away. Yet, over a year has passed since Soul returned the metal, and they still haven't managed to open the vault. Not for lack of trying, though the current head simply couldn't unlock it. The elders and the head attempted to pool their spiritual energy, but to no avail. Their ancestors must have never anticipated their descent to such a dire state. Yi Haxiang's sense of powerlessness runs deep, and Soul is determined to remedy it. He spoke without fully comprehending the desperate struggle of a frail old man. They wanted to unlock the vault themselves instead of relying on external assistance, but the war was rapidly approaching. Now, they turned to Soul for help, with Damiang being the one to propose the idea. Soul is the person they trust the most among those who can't be entirely trusted. He willingly agreed to assist them in unlocking the secret vault. Moonbi still harbored reservations about her counterfeit husband. The prospect of revealing the family's treasures was too enticing to pass up. For the first time, Yi Haxiang's face exhibited a spark of life, as they could finally access the secret vault. It was situated quite a distance from the city. Fortunately, Moonbi had warmly accepted his motion Dharma tool gift. They'd arrive at a seemingly ordinary location to Soul. Its concealment was impeccable. There was a crevice in the cliffs where the jade metal could be employed. It didn't appear or feel particularly special, yet it was a precious key item. The 3 who accompanied Soul wore expressions of concern, fearing they would be no match for him if he decided to eliminate them and seize all the treasures. To alleviate their apprehension, he proceeded with the unlocking process. It soon became evident that you would need to channel an enormous amount of energy to unseal the vault. Eventually, the inconspicuous cliff face swung open flawlessly. The family head momentarily blocked Soul from entering. Outsiders were not permitted inside the vault. However, given all his assistance, they might as well enter together. I thought family head was about to be headless. It's no secret that this vault probably contains untold treasures from their glory days. Right now, Soul is free to do as he pleases. He can't even be certain that he won't be blinded by greed. Suddenly, he remembered John Gunn's teaching: passing by a treasure and holding back is foolish. Alchemists cannot be trusted, as they would do anything to become deities. Trusting others easily and blindly believing their intentions is a death sentence at times. Soul got lost in his thoughts, questioning if he had been living well until now. Is helping this struggling family putting himself in danger? These people can't possibly stop him if he goes all out. If these old men were powerful, they wouldn't have treated him with respect. It all boils down to the fact that he's strong, and they're weak. That was until another familiar voice called out to him. It was the fifth master, reminding him of the kindness and trust that John Gunn had given him. Soul grew up with affection, values, and trust because of his mentors. That's why John Gunn warned him about people who didn't share the same morals. On his long journey, he encountered people who helped him. Good men will be good, and bad men will be bad. It's up to him if he'll succumb to evil and greedy thoughts for treasures. He was trying to find excuses to harm the Yi family. At the end of the day, Soul is a good man, and a good man sticks to his morals. The interior of the vault is larger than he initially thought. Treasure lay before him as far as the eye can see. There are dun pills, dharma tools, and even middle-grade talismans. However, all of these provide long-term strength boosts. Using them in the upcoming war would take too long. One thing that might help them is the stacks of easy-to-use amulets. High-grade and superior-grade amulets will certainly assist them immensely. Additionally, there are many books with unique and powerful magic arts that can be quickly mastered. Moonbee also discovered a whole box of life-saving crystal protection beads. The family had apologized that he couldn't share too much treasure as they needed it for rebuilding. The family had doubted the young man, but Soul didn't show any signs of greed, even though he could easily overpower them. For compensation, he could choose some items to take. Soul wouldn't miss such a rare opportunity. Given his slow cultivation progress, the answer was simple. He wanted a dun pill to increase his spirit energy. For that purpose, the Great Protection Elixir would be the best choice. It's an excellent medicine that would undoubtedly aid him in leveling up. The Yi family has regained their foundation for rebuilding, and they must prepare for the incoming storm in 3 months. While Soul was cultivating, Moonbee came to his room to inspect his crystal protection bracelet. The light in this one had already dimmed. A long time ago, a Yi family ancestor helped a rivulet phoenix defeat a fiend. They gifted the ancestor with these marble-like items afterward. They were the blue crystals on the bracelets, treasures from a sacred beast, which explained their efficacy against elementary spirits. The ancestor was a beautiful woman whose Niben had been ruined. Even after she had aged, the phoenix never stopped visiting. Cases of sacred beasts having feelings for humans were possible. Makiyum herself is a product of that love. But in the ancestor's case, it was a one-sided love for the phoenix. Moonbee gave Soul a new bracelet and 12 more crystals as a backup. She was grateful for her fake husband's support in defending her family without coveting their treasures. It takes a month to digest one of the treasured pills, and Soul already feels the effects of one. As he was about to take the last pill, he was informed of a visitor. He already knew who it was just by sensing it. He hurriedly ran, expecting a reunion with senior sister Makiyum, only to be greeted by a carefree old man's voice. It was none other than Senior Gwango Duin. It might not have been the visitor he was expecting, but it was still a pleasant surprise. The old man wanted to know all about his adventures since they separated. He had even heard the rumors circulating in town. Until now, the senior couldn't help but treat Soul like a little nephew or something. That was until another visitor entered the Yi family's doors. This time, it really was Makiyum, who had heard about his marriage and inclination toward men. To her, it now made sense why Soul was so distantly polite. The senior felt the monstrous energy emanating from Makiyum. It was even stronger than Soul's. He couldn't believe that these two came from the now-ruined Iron Sphere sect. It was the first time that Makiyum and Senior Gwango Duin had met, but they were already getting along well. They bonded over teasing Soul in front of his face. When the Su siblings arrived, it finally became a complete reunion. The first thing on Sui's mind was a proper drink for the occasion. As everyone merrily drank the night away, Soul wanted to take Makiyum aside for a quick conversation. The Yi family consistently proposed martial arts duels instead of an all-out war, but the Huang family refused due to their overwhelming advantage. Today, Soul's progress was attributed to the potent protection elixir, while Sui contributed high-level amulets for the upcoming battle. As the delegation advanced towards the battlefield, they were suddenly ambushed. Sewell quickly leaped to the front lines to thwart the surprise attack. The critical assets in this impending battle were Wango Duin and Makium, ensuring victory was all but assured. Sewell advised most of the weaker Yi family members to focus on defense for the time being. Their mission was to hold the line while the three spearheads went for the jugular. It didn't take long for them to confront the Huang clan's experts, who now seemingly outnumbered the Yi family in terms of law of spirit energy alchemists. Even Zhou Gaiyang was seen shamelessly lurking in the lower ranks. The enemies aimed to attack with a divided force simultaneously, but against someone like Sewell, this was a grave error. A visit to the secret vault had significantly bolstered the Yi family's combat potential. They could now boast impressive defensive capabilities. If all the enemy experts descended at once, the Yi family might have struggled, but now they could eliminate foes at their own pace. First on their hit list was the arrogant Wei Zhougyang, who believed this war would be a cakewalk. Zhou Gaiyang recognized Makium, who had been implicated in the Madame Li incident, and planned to capture her alive. In response, Sewell unleashed 2 spiral bombs of different elements. Zhou Gaiyang dismissed them as futile until his energy shield shattered like glass. Although Zhou Gaiyang should have been a higher level than Sewell, a single attack penetrated his barrier. He decided to take the offensive with his trusty sacred gold rings. Zhou Gaiyang unleashed countless golden rings into the air, as if Sonic the Hedgehog just died. Sewell's response was agile and flashy, employing fast-dodging clones and after-images. To counter this bewildering ability, Zhou Gaiyang divided his attacks into 5, ensuring that Sewell's real body only had to contend with 20% of the onslaught. This provided him the opportunity to employ the touch of mist with his 3 swords. Zhou Gaiyang had been fixated on the clones, and now he was paying the price. Struggling to maintain his barrier against a lower-leveled alchemist, Zhou Gaiyang believed a battle of attrition was his only option, hoping to outlast Sewell. However, this strategy might have worked against ordinary alchemists, but not against someone who had consumed the mythical brilliant jade and gold elixirs. Sewell took advantage of Zhou Gaiyang's passivity to unleash his eternal sword rain without any hindrance. On the opposite side of the battlefield, he also summoned the Flying Vortex. While these simultaneous attacks were taxing, they allowed him to eliminate other enemies besides Zhou Gaiyang. Finally, 3 of Sewell's swords broke through the man's barrier. Sewell presented Zhou Gaiyang with 2 choices: instant death or ingesting a rancid poison that would sap his cultivation. The once proud Wei family delegate chose the latter to save his pitiful life. With this, the enemy side lost one of their most formidable assets without a genuine fight. Although the Wang family had the numerical advantage, the 3 experts on the Yi family's side operated on a different level. Most of the Huang experts were occupied with the Yi family's defense and believed they were on the brink of a breakthrough. Their grave error had been concentrating all their experts in one place, only to be bombarded with numerous high-grade amulets that got skill diffed. Many members of the Huang family's forces had become prisoners of war. Zhou Gaiyang, in particular, proved to be a disappointment, as one of the elders drifted aimlessly. He was struck by 3 familiar swords and added to the captive count. The Huang family's power is slowly eroding as their experts fall one by one. Since the beginning of this battle, they have been on the losing side. As another elder voiced his dissatisfaction with the unfolding events, he too was struck by those same 3 barrier-shattering swords. This power emanated from Sewell, seen as a mere child in the eyes of an old man. With little time and spirit energy to spare, he needed to take down another enemy. This task was easily accomplished by deploying his clones and overwhelming the opposition. Soon enough, they captured every expert and disciple of the Huang clan. With the mighty Huang Baochun tied up and powerless, the Yi family could decide his fate. When asked for his opinion, the domineering Huang Baochun could only helplessly watch as his family faced annihilation. There shouldn't have been mutual hatred between the families, but involving the Wei family to wipe out the Yi clan crossed a line. As the executioner's sword swung down on the family head, it was only stopped when the Huang clan offered their spirit stone mine. However, a dying man's word couldn't be trusted, so an official document for the mine had to be presented. With the revival of the Yi family, they could afford to let the Huang clan go with a forced peace treaty and take some of their fortune. As the Yi family regained power, this war would become irrelevant. It was all thanks to Sewell and the trio of monstrous experts. Everything was settled after a long while. But Qiubing's information about the location of the Yan'an nation still bothered Sewell. She might be an opportunist, but she wasn't the type to lie. Traveling to a different continent was still a mystery. A direct teleportation portal would be best. As he relaxed in his room, a powerful presence entered the manor. Everyone was already outside to welcome the incoming experts. Soul respectfully greeted the stalwart bearded man who had just landed. This was the Wei family's patriarch, here to claim 5 of his men who had been captured. A sound barrier between the two was necessary to discuss the terms of release. First, Soul wanted to clarify that he had already shared what he knew about Madame Wei's case. The patriarch recognized his capabilities and promised not to pursue further without evidence, meaning that as long as Soul was innocent, there would be no problems. Since the portal to open the palace would be closed for the next 300 years, it was safe to say that he was cleared. Madame's body only indicated death by elementary spirit. Patriarch Wei thought everything had been settled, so he wanted to take his men now. However, Soul was just getting started. Clearing his name should have been the priority. The prisoners of war were in good condition and had sustained minimal injuries. Old Man Wei only wanted the conditions for their release. The price was simple: 20 special grade spirit stones per alchemist, 100 spirit stones in total for all 5 of the Wei family experts. The patriarch's expression turned grim upon hearing that price, but Soul believed it was worth it. He even humbly explained that he was offering a discount due to the Wei family's reputation. 100 special grade spirit stones was a significant amount, and it might have been better if his men had been killed in battle instead. The deal was agreed upon and documented by the provincial inspector, so there should be no more lingering problems from now on. For this windfall, 40 spirit stones would go to Soul and 30 each to Makium and the senior. Guanyu Duan was evidently pleased with this substantial treasure for such an easy task. They had truly been fortunate that the enemies had severely underestimated them. For now, at least the senior could finally afford some better talismans instead of Dharma tools. Makium had also departed for her training journey. Now Soul was alone once again. Since he had just regained his freedom, he had time to set his plans in motion. He's finally done grinding. First things first, shopping for precious elixirs. But the valuable ones are auctioned off to the highest bidders, mostly affluent families. If purchasing isn't an option, Soul might as well craft them himself. He even considered making some for Wanwan. Thanks to his second master's teachings, he knows how to handle elixirs for magical beasts. He can only hope that Wanwan can grow up to be like his senior's white cloud crane. That magical beast can take on alchemists single-handedly. Suddenly, the old lady from Bao Xin sect appeared to summon him again. Every time they meet, there's new information regarding Soul. His victory against the Huang and Wei alliance was masterful. As always, Shidobing remains shameless, distancing herself from the war when she's the one who essentially triggered it. Soul just kept surpassing her expectations. She's the only one who can truly appreciate the extraordinariness of his feats. Capturing experts instead of killing them was a smarter and more challenging move. He essentially defeated the powerful Wei family with his own strength. As for why he's been summoned, it's for a question. The sect has recovered the body of the faceless murderer and found something. The murderer was poisoned to death by a potent toxin, indicating that Soul was weaker than the murderer at that time. So Xiaobing has some theories about how he got stronger in a short time. The logical conclusion is that he acquired some valuable treasure from the mysterious lake. Defeating 2 Sun alchemists is no small feat, so she believes a repeat of what happened to the Yi family 300 years ago may have occurred. She was quite accurate. Soul didn't get stronger thanks to treasures related to the lake. However, these are just stories in Xiaobing's mind without any evidence, making them difficult to substantiate. Xiaobing wants to emphasize that she's quite fond of Soul and would like them to collaborate if anything interesting arises. Sometimes, the sect sends alchemists to work on magic beasts, sacred herbs, or hidden treasures. They outsource these tasks to other alchemists, but Soul only wants to work with people he can trust. These two have very different definitions of trust. Ultimately, Xiaobing wants to utilize Soul, and he's aware of her intentions. Untold treasures are tempting, but he can't easily work with someone so eccentric. To persuade him, she reveals that Yana Nation is a considerable distance from Daewu Nation to the east, and that's not the only piece of information she possesses. She's slowly drawing him in, genuinely seeking mutual benefit. He leaves the room with an assignment to obtain venom from the 7 silver-scaled snake, an S-class magic beast. Xiaobing also mentions the existence of a unique memoir. Long ago, there was an alchemist from Yana Nation who settled in Daewu until his death. He compiled his life experiences in a published memoir written in a foreign language, now sitting in the corner of the General Assembly's library. This revelation doesn't seem to satisfy Soul. To access those books, he'll need to make a move for the sect. There's a good chance he can translate them using his mother tongue, which the masters taught him. For now, he's embarking on a journey using a teleportation portal. It took 8 days to secure a spot in the teleportation circle, indicating high demand among alchemists. He recognizes a few disciples from Mount White sect with their cloud design sleeves. They are a powerful sect, but that doesn't guarantee the virtue of their members. Sowell has learned that there are corrupt individuals in righteous sects and good people in evil organizations. For now, he remains cautious during the journey. The other individuals filling the spots wear different attire. Seeing the Mount White sect members, the three rush as fast as they can, afraid of being late. Finally, the portal activates, and it's time to hunt down the S-class magic beast. 5 days have elapsed since he embarked on his journey in this enchanted forest. Given the elusive nature of this 7 silver-scaled creature, it is wiser to await its approach. He even concealed his true prowess to present a more enticing target. Unquestionably, this tactic proved effective as the beast finally sought him out. Attempting to approach from behind, the serpent was astounded by Sowell's swiftness. Believing him an easy prey, it was unwilling to release its grasp so readily. Sowell simply hovered and evaded until the creature grew irate. Eventually, venom began to drip from the snake's fangs. Swiftly, before the creature could squander more of this precious substance, Sowell severed its head. This venom is exceptionally potent and capable of stopping a heart. The snake's nidun and scales hold considerable value, but Sowell possesses all he requires. Even after losing its head in combat, this monster displayed the audacity to strike once more. A minor inconvenience was resolved with a mere slap. Instances of magical beasts behaving in such a manner are not uncommon, and Sowell was prepared. Gathering the extra resources, he then departed from the woods. Xiaobing's information proves to be remarkably accurate. While traversing the skies, he noticed an intriguing cave. It is relatively small and devoid of any signs of magical beasts. This would be an ideal location to set up a magical trap for crafting elixirs for Wanwan. He possesses all the necessary ingredients, including the snake's nidun. His skills in nidun extraction have improved, so this should not consume much time. His first attempt at utilizing the nidun of a superior magic beast was mentally taxing. For now, he can administer 5 of the mass-produced advanced heavenly birth pills to Wanwan. However, the feline merely glanced at the inferior pills and ignored them. Since experiencing the gold elixir, Wanwan has become more discerning. Wanwan has become quite the pampered cat. Since Sowell invested considerable effort in crafting these pills, he threatened to consume them himself, prompting his pet to happily devour the pills. With numerous elixirs for Wanwan, the feeding process would be protracted. However, even after consuming several, there appears to be no change in the cat. It took roughly a week to deplete all the other pills, leaving only the precious elixir extracted from the snake's nidun. As soon as it was presented, Wanwan pounced on it. This feline possesses an affinity for rare and precious items. Under Sowell's care, Wanwan is leading a luxurious life. Now, Sowell can concentrate on the snake venom, the most potent he has acquired in a while. Diluting it in water and injecting it into his body yielded no discernible effects. Therefore, he is eager to experiment with a pure form of the venom. With just a tiny dose, he experienced the desired outcome. He wished to explore further, but the venom swiftly rendered him unconscious. Upon awakening, Wanwan was joyfully licking his face once again. He may have gone too far by injecting 10 drops into his system, but aside from a migraine, he appears to be in good health. Sowell rarely sleeps anymore, so it is uncommon for him to slumber as deeply as he did. His body is now in prime condition, but Wanwan seems restless, vigorously scratching the cave walls. Closer inspection reveals that the markings on the surface are highly unusual. After consuming numerous elixirs, Wanwan has grown considerably stronger. As an experiment, Sowell dared his feline companion to break free from the inner binding seal. Sowell wanted to seize this opportunity to enhance his seal, but it seemed like Wanwan had given up. In the next second, the cat would demonstrate that this was far from the truth. Wanwan broke the seal, and he went for more. Sowell had to activate his barrier as his sharp claw attack mercilessly targeted his master. What had begun as a basic attack now oddly converged into something else. This was different. Wanwan manifested an attack in the shape of Sowell's Genesis sword, even mimicking his flying Squall energy strike. It might not have the full power of the destruction sword arts, but it was still potent. With this, one could say that Wanwan was closer to becoming a high-class magic beast. He was still young, but he was one of a kind. A few more elixirs, and he would become even stronger. On his way back, he finally had the chance to use the Sacred Needle of Wisdom. It directly pointed to the location of nearby treasures, and Madame Wee probably used this to achieve her level at a young age. These tools allowed her to take on risks confidently when no one else would. This could lead Sowell to riches beyond imagination. So he vowed to collect every single sacred herb in this forest. While he was at it, he would hunt every magic beast too. Thanks to the needle, searching the area had become much easier, and the quality of his finds had improved as well. But in his search, he felt an unusual force. Observing from a distance, he saw what the force was about. It was the alchemists of Mount White Sect, desperately protecting themselves. Soul thought it would be fun to watch this unfold for a while. They were facing off against formidable angry monkeys. Bad temper, intelligence, and strength in numbers were the name of the game for these beasts. The alchemists couldn't even counterattack because they were so busy defending. The seniors couldn't move as they pleased with their disciples in tow. These juniors knew that and wanted their elders to go all out. One of the old men used multiple amulets at once. It was effective in dealing with the charging monkeys, but it also angered the beasts. In response, the alchemists performed the quaternary palace formation. This was the first time Soul had seen this bizarre formation. It seemed like all of them were pooling their energy for one powerful attack. The concentration of their spirit power and the massive barrier formed quite a lethal combination. This kind of technique was only possible for those who had trained together. The monkeys were furious, and they wanted to destroy the barrier. They didn't retreat in the face of deadly force. There were only a few beasts left, but the elders couldn't handle another major attack. So, the only course of action was to undo the technique and duel the remaining monkeys. After some time, the group successfully dealt with the crisis. One of the masters paid the highest price, injuring himself in the process of their powerful combo. Despite being severely injured, this old man actually brought out an elixir for his precious disciple. The old man wanted to make his disciple's dream of becoming the youngest law of spirit energy alchemist ever come true. The other master saw that and couldn't be selfish. He followed suit and handed Minna the medicine as well. She was a kind-hearted child. As they were winding down from the monkey attack, one of the masters was struck in the heart. As for who had done such a thing, the other master almost lost himself in anger. It was the ungrateful disciple, Yi Lip. This kid needs Jesus. The little bastard just killed his injured master in cold blood, and now he's going for the other elder, though that attempt failed due to a barrier block. But the elder is already drained and not in a good condition to endure further. Yi Lip is justifying his horrible actions in his own twisted way. He intends not to leave any witnesses, and the last elder has fallen against his power. Minna was overcome with rage as she prepared to fight her senior brother. Yi Lip is just acting out of pure greed. He was blinded by the prospect of taking over 30 Nidans from 30 monkeys, along with all their previous hunts for himself. He's the worst kind of beast in this forest. After going back to the sect, he will have to answer for everything that happened. He has built his reputation too high to start over. Yi Lip believes that empathetic alchemists are the reason for their sect's stagnation, so he can just scrap everything and start anew with his improved skills. Now that she knows his next move, there's no reason to keep her alive anymore. Minna wasn't able to do anything to save the masters. She's starting to accept the fact that this is it for her. The same attack that killed 2 experts is now aiming at Minna. But Yi Lip was suddenly enveloped by a painful burst of energy. It came from none other than Soul himself. He can't stand by after seeing the actions of this scum. Soul couldn't care less if this group died off, but this is a different matter. Minna's mind was reeling after seeing everyone in her party die. She started thinking that Soul is just a stronger enemy than Yi Lip. When asked if Soul helped the girl, he responded that he just killed some trash. He despises people who dare to hurt their own master. As he observes all their loot, he asks if the seniors have any other disciples. It turns out that the elders of Mount White Sect only taken 1 disciple each. When it comes to family, the elder didn't even marry. Their pouch of abundance should belong to the sect from now on. If that's the case, Soul might as well just take it. Minna wanted to contest this thought, as she would be the one who would need to explain what happened here to the sect. She can't be suspected of taking the loot, and she'd have to tell on Soul. She carefully considered every possibility from here on out and came up with a solution. The party went here for a magic beast hunt. They can just pin everything on Yi Lip and Soul and take the Nibens and beast corpse. She has no choice but to give up this much. Minna is afraid to even move after seeing how strong Soul is. He didn't give her any trouble though, agreeing to her plan and even leaving 1 Niden that was hers in the first place. This much would prove that Soul is not at all evil, but seeing as he's still taking his cut of the loot, he's not an angel either. The Elder Master and her own master are now in eternal slumber. She remembered how kind and thoughtful her master was despite his nagging. The tears of the maiden started falling like rain. After collecting all the corpses, Soul went up to Minna and handed her the elixir that her master offered her earlier. This elixir of purity is just what she needs right now. She's drained of all of her energy and would need a boost to get out in the forest alive. Sewol noticed that and even gave her some of his own medicine. At first, she doubted if it was poison, but she had no choice but to take it. The effectiveness was equal to the precious elixir of purity, and Sewol gave her two. Much to his surprise, the young lady suddenly lost consciousness. Ayo, what was that pill? Even Sewol was surprised at what had just happened. It might be impolite, but he had to check her body. Shivering and with faint breathing, he shouldn't have given her the precious paddle elixirs. Her spirit energy had destabilized. The elixir was way too strong. To alleviate that, he would have to use his own spirit energy for stabilization. Diving into Minna's subconscious, her mind was blocked by an ornate gate. Inside this gate were raging waves of excess spiritual energy. Sewol had to step in and calm her power as much as he could. After a few moments, it seemed like her pain had gone. Now she was just resting for a bit. She was still having trouble processing too much energy, but it had slowed down for now. Sewol needed to take her away from this open space full of alchemists and magic beasts, so he brought her to the cave from earlier. In there, she started to wake up again. The last thing she remembered was the powerful young man. Checking everything, it looked like nothing was wrong, and she was able to live thanks to him. Now, she needed to report back to the sect somehow. It would be best if the powerful young man could testify against the despicable Yi-Lip. She didn't know where she currently was, and the sky was becoming darker. After resting, she was confident that she would be able to come back to the sect. That was until a familiar voice came out of the woods. Sewol had not abandoned her after all. A man followed through. He even set up a magic trap in front of the cave entrance to keep her safe. Minna steeled her resolve and pushed the words out of her mouth. She pleaded with Sewol to come with her to the sect. She waited for his response with bated breath. Our boy was lost in thought. He had never thought about going to this Mount White sect before. He had killed a disciple, but it was a punishment for a grave sin. The problem would be the two laws of spirit energy alchemists who had died before. The sect would undoubtedly investigate, and he would be mentioned in the process. He agreed to Minna's pleading, and it evidently lifted the young lady's spirits. She assured him that he wouldn't regret visiting their sect. Their ancestor and sect creator had searched all over Yuying province for the most beautiful and spirit energy-filled mountains. He had ended up on the legendary Mount White. Aboard the flying sword, the two had finally arrived. The ancestor of this sect was said to have reached the vitality of yin and yang. Some people went even further, saying that he had become a deity. They were greeted by a lively young man at the front gates. But it was odd that she had arrived with none of the original party. As for why that was, she'd have to explain upstairs. She introduced Sewol to another elder as a senior in business. From this point on in the mountains, teleportation alchemy was forbidden, and Sewol kept that in mind. In front of him was a seemingly endless series of stairs going up and about the whole mountain range. They quickly scaled it by flying and arrived at the front of a modest white palace. Minna shouted her full name, Akyomin, asking for an audience with the Lord. The gates then opened up slowly. Sewol was about to meet the strongest person on the mountain. He was an older, dignified man sitting on a throne and surrounded by the elders. This was the Lord of Mount White Sect. Woon Sewol politely paid respect and introduced himself. The Lord of Legislation, as he called himself, was named Sun Wook. He thought he knew every law of spirit energy alchemist in Yuying province, but this young man was unknown to him. Such a young expert couldn't have flown under the radar. As for the reason for their visit, Minna would be the one to explain. After the incident, she had brought the 3 corpses from the mountain. Of course, the Lord of Legislation had to see for himself what the fuss was about. The cause of death for the 2 elders was confirmed as the White Thundershot. As for the 3rd corpse, Yi-Lip had died of a different cause. It had also been confirmed that there were some internal damages. Given the traces of the White Thundershot, it told them that the culprit was a disciple. The only problem would be determining whether the dead Yi-Lip or the young woman in front of them was the culprit.